Muhami Matters with Chris Adams, powered by CJA Consulting.
I think law firms, they know what they don't know. The people that they've put in place aren't working and they don't know what to do about it.
You are firefighting the whole time. I mean, I've done it myself in my career. You're just firefighting from one day to the next, and you can't do anything strategic. You can't help the firm to grow and move forward.
They really have to let go of the preconceived notions that they have in what worked when they started their firm.
What are typically some of the first things you notice when you go into a company as a fractional COO?
It is just like this masterclass in businesses, because we work in all these businesses and we can tell you, hey, this worked, this didn't work.
Welcome to Muhami Matters, where credibility meets clarity in legal and professional services. I'm your host, as usual, Chris Adams, founder of Muhami and CJA Consulting. Today's episode is another special one, a real conversation between two professionals working behind the scenes to help law firms and other professional services grow. I'm so proud to be joined by Sharon Means, a fractional COO, EOS integrator based in Cleveland, Ohio. She helps firms put structure and accountability in place so they can scale sustainably. We're going to explore how fractional leadership's reshaping professional services, what EOS really means in practice, and what we can all learn from global examples of law firms getting it right. And Sharon, I have to say you are my hero with one of the best names in the business, Sharon Means Business. It's just like, it's fantastic. I wish my name was so good. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Well, I married into it, and so I wanted to use it. And I appreciate that. But and thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You're most welcome. So it's Friday night here and Friday morning where you are in Cleveland, Ohio. Tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you got to where we are today.
Yeah, so I'm a CPA. And I was working as a fractional CFO, controller, and was a COO of an accounting firm when I found EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's based on a book, Traction, by Gino Wickman, in case anyone is interested. And I found it at an accounting conference, and I brought it back to our leadership team at the accounting firm and really enjoyed it. We implemented it. Used a very good friend of mine that had implemented it at his firm, was becoming an implementer. And so decided, hey, being a COO is very similar to integrator. You're just a specialized version where you utilize EOS and its framework. And so I was like, wow, I really want to do this. So we rolled it out to some of our clients that we had. And then I decided that I wanted to do this fractionally for other professional service firms, mostly law firms at this point, that don't have somebody in that integrator seat. And the integrator seat is, there's a visionary, and that's usually the managing partner, a firm owner, whatever you want to call them. And then there's me, and I'm the person that's kind of implementing the vision for the firm and carrying out the accountabilities so that people can get things done, and generally just making sure that stuff gets done. And I work fractionally because they don't have somebody in office that can either have the responsibility, doesn't want the responsibility. Lots of times it's a COO that's overworked because they have a lot of other responsibilities, as I'm sure you've seen in working with law firms. There's always that one person that seems to get stuck with everything. Mm-hmm. And so part of my job is kind of taking things away from that person so that maybe I can coach them up so that they can be the integrator at some point. So I kind of coach myself out of a job, as many of us do. And, once they grow and they scale and they have, the internal resources, or maybe they hire somebody on a full-time basis.
I do find it a bit ironic in both of what we do, that if we do a good job, it kind of means we're out of a job. So it's a good sign, but also success comes at a cost for us. But the pride is always there, that you've done a good job and you've got the results for your client. So Absolutely. Tell us a bit about you. Are you born and bred in Cleveland? How long have you lived there for?
Yeah, my whole life. Yeah, I really love Cleveland. Both my parents are here. My husband's family's from here. I have two kids, 25 and 27, and they're both up and out, and they live here as well. So yeah, we've all just kind of created this as our hub, and so we're all sticking around.
And are they going to take on the Means Business mantra as well?
That's the thing. When they were younger, that they had to come up with like, company names or something and some sort of like, class that they were taking. And I think they're the ones that came up with it first. They were
Brilliant.
like, it was my daughters, Caitlin and Cassidy, and it was Caitlin Means Business and Cassidy Means Business when they had to come up with stuff. So when I started my business, I thought that's a great thing to take from. So that's what I used.
Family business. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, I mean, the US is a big country, obviously, 400 odd million people. Have you found many people using EOS for law firms?
Yeah, it seems to really have taken off. I think law firms they know what they don't know, and they know a lot of times. I think we were just talking before about hitting a ceiling, right?
Mm.
Like you've just, the people that they've put in place aren't working, and they don't know what to do about it. They've hired their sister-in-law to do the business development, and their brother-in-law does their books, and it's like, that's worked until it doesn't work
Mm.
anymore. And now what can we do about it? And that's when you put people and processes in place so that it's scalable and repeatable.
So we've both built fractional practices on opposite sides of the world almost.
Yeah.
From your side, what do you think has driven the shift in the market towards fractionals getting involved in, I think, companies big and small?
Yeah, I think it's just the mindset difference that you don't need somebody full time. A lot of times, the firms that you and I are working in can't afford to have full time resources for all the things that they need. So what ends up being is kind of like I was just talking about the COO. It's like a slash job, so it's like their HR, finance, IT, business development. They work in marketing, and it's like it's too many things for one person. You can't really find that unicorn. But if you can outsource some of those things to a fractional, you get really world class people. I mean, the people that work and as fractionals, I mean, it is just like this master class in businesses, because we work in all these businesses and we can tell you, hey, this worked, this didn't work, or hey, I can see that you're struggling in marketing or business development. How can I help? How can I bring in some of the people that I know that can help with that? So I just think that it's that mindset of it. They have to be there 40 hours, and they have to know what they're doing at all times, kind of mentality that some of the older law firms have. And it's the mind shift of like, hey, I'm going to hire somebody, they're really good, and then they're going to level set us so that we're really good, and then we can grow and scale from there.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen the same thing with some of the clients I've worked with, where there's one that I've come in as a fractional CMO, and it's a law firm,
Hmm.
and they are looking at their staff and saying, "Oh, Chris, I see what you're doing with our marketing and business development team. Like, what about the other functions?" Well, I'm not a COO. You need to talk to someone like Sharon, but
Right.
I can help you with some
Exactly.
operations, but why don't you talk to a fractional CFO? Why don't you talk to a
Hmm.
fractional COO, and get that help? Because you don't need them permanently. You don't need to in
Right.
this part of the world. You have to pay for visas and insurance and all that sort of stuff. With a fractional, you don't have to worry about any of those costs, any of that hassle. As you say, you get the world class advice and the experience. Like you and I both worked across so many different companies, large and small, and you just naturally learn stuff, I think, from there, what works and what doesn't, and then you can bring in the best practice and train up the existing teams so that they step up. Has that been your experience as well?
Absolutely. And it's also about knowing who to bring in.
Mm.
I'm also a CPA, so I get a lot of times like, hey, can you also do my books? Or can you, should we hire a CFO? And it's like, well, your books are a mess, but we need to find somebody to fix your books before you can hire a CFO, because they what are they going to work with if your books are a mess? So it's a lot of that too, is the advice of, let's just, and the hiring here, it's the same. You've got payroll taxes, and you've got, health insurance, and all the things that you have to pay an employee, um, which you don't have with a fractional. And typically you don't have long-term contracts where we're just working month to month. And once we get to a certain level, we can disguise when we want to kind of offboard ourselves. And there's it's not a big deal to once you hire somebody, it is more effort to remove them or change, or the top talking to. So yeah, I see it's a very big benefit.
So you're a COO. What are sort of typically some of the first things you notice when you go into a company as a fractional COO? What are there common threads of things that you generally look at first and need to address?
Yeah, the first thing is usually what we call the accountability chart, which is just a fancy org chart that lists the roles and responsibilities. And I feel like most times when you start to do that, there's a few things that come out. First, you're going to find your underperformers,
Mm-hmm.
people that really aren't doing their job, people that come up week after week in our leadership team meetings. And so we're always trying to put guardrails around them. Obviously, it's not going to work. And those people usually, when we start with the accountability and start telling them that these are the KPIs that they're going to be measured by, and these are the things that they need to do, they usually self-select out in the first 90 days, which is, nice for everybody. And then the other thing is the holes, right? So like a lot of times the managing partner is in multiple roles, and they can't really do the rainmaking. They can't do the big picture, the visions, because they're in the marketing seat, the sales seat, the finance seat. And so how are we going to get that person out of too many roles? Or like the COO, same thing. If we want them to take over the integrator role, how are we going to get them out? So usually the accountability chart, and then also just what roles aren't being handled at all. Like a lot of times, and I'm sure you see this, Chris, is that like, well, marketing and business development is handled by the receptionist, but then also the social media stuff is being done by, all the attorneys have to come up with a blog post. And it's like, oh, well, then no one's responsible for it, because they're just, everybody is. And when everybody is, nobody is. And so then you're like, well, that could be reason why, your marketing efforts aren't really paying off, because no one's really, we can all help with it, but the buck has to stop with somebody. And so that's what the accountability chart is that, hey, these are the things that you own, and you can get help for it, and you can ask us, there's things that we can do to help you, but by and large, you're responsible for these KPIs and for getting the work completed.
Okay, so tell us a bit more about this accountability chart. Is this so? You say it's a fancy org chart.
Yeah.
Is it looking at accountability of every single person in that firm or in that company?
Yes.
Is that how it works?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. You start the visionary and then integrator, and then there's underneath me is usually the leadership team, sales and marketing, finance, HR, operations, whoever they have. And then, everybody, they've got 5 to 7 things that they work on. One of them is what we call LMA, because it's lead, manage, and accountability. So that means they are responsible for people. And then underneath those people are the people that are doing the work. And so what are they responsible for? Which is also really nice, because when you're a new person starting at a firm, you know exactly who does what. You don't have to ask or go to the wrong person, because the accountability chart is really a nice blueprint for that. But yeah, we also kind of put in there roles that we don't have yet that we want to fill. Always keeping an eye out for, what's the next hire. And then also when we come to budgeting season, which we are usually around now.
Yep.
Who are we going to hire? And it's easy to know because it's the accountability chart and not just somebody's idea or whim or and then we budget for it so that we know when we're going to hire that person.
So how long is this stage building this initial chart? How long does that generally take?
I think the accountability chart, it takes, a couple hours. If you work with an implementer, that's part of the onboarding of, their process. And so you can do that. Sometimes they already have an accountability chart that they've started. A lot of times when I work with firms, they've had some exposure to EOS. And so then they start reading the book and then they download all the forms that the EOS website has, and they start building out their accountability chart. But I would imagine it isn't like instantaneous, and it's always changing because like, you get it locked in and then you think, okay, well, this person isn't working out like we thought, like they, once we started. So now what are we going to do? And how can we rearrange things? And we're always reviewing the accountability chart for, changes and improvements.
So now it seems like a good time to, I think, probably explain the EOS system a bit more.
Yeah.
So we can work out how it all fits together. So give us a bit more detail and practical terms of the structure.
Yep. So EOS is just like anything else. It's, business operating system. It's, not rocket science, but it just is a nice way that it's packaged. And basically it's, 6 key components of your business. It's data, which is, your numbers and your budget and your scorecard, and traction, which is, we meet on a weekly basis. There's cadence to our meetings. So the leadership team meets weekly, and
Keep going.
okay. And so that we get to have these weekly meetings so that we can go over all of the issues that we need to work on the business and not just in the business. So these are the big ticket, big picture things. From there, we go to department meetings. I have one-on-one meetings with the leadership team so that I can help them with their bottlenecks and kind of work through where they are with their what we call rocks, which are the big ticket items that we're working on through the quarter. So, many times people just talk about things in meetings that they want to get done, opening a new location or moving to a new CRM system, but they never do it. We just talk about it and talk about it. These are the things that we're going to actually do. So, in our quarterly meetings, we have what we want to do we review the year, we review 3-year picture. And then from there, we kind of backtrack and we say, okay, if we wanted to do 4 locations in 3 years, this year we're probably going to have to open at least 1 location. So maybe this quarter, our rock is looking for a location or talking to other business owners about where, a good location to set up would be. So those are the rocks that we talk about, and those are on the quarterly meetings. And then also it's like I was just saying, it's the people component. So it's the accountability chart. It's what we call a vision traction organizer, which has a lot of their marketing stuff. So their core values, their core focus, their 3 uniques, which are, whatever is unique to them. Usually 2 of the 3 uniques are something that all, kind of it's not that unique, but the third one is the one that most people, don't have in their firm. So we want to make sure that we're kind of specializing ourselves and positioning ourselves and also picking who our ideal client is and how we're going to go to market with that. And then our 3-year picture, like I was saying, our 1-year plan. And then quarterly, we also have things that we break it down so that we know what we want to do for this quarter. And that's kind of like the EOS framework. And I use a program called 90.io. It's a really cool app that just about everybody uses when they implement EOS, and it kind of houses all of those documents, and we run all of our meetings from there. So our meetings are a really strict schedule. So they're an hour and a half, and we have an agenda that we really follow and move through. So what we want to do is solve issues. We don't want to just talk and have people explain their KPIs or have people explain why they couldn't do their to-do this week. We really want to go to what we can solve and how we can move the firm forward on a week to week basis. And that's the nice thing about having somebody like me, is that I'm championing the EOS system inside the firm, and I have no allegiance to anybody. That, like when we were saying with the fractionals, the other thing I forgot to mention is that it's so nice that like they bring people like us in, because we don't have an agenda. I don't know that Chris won't work on this project because he doesn't like to do those kinds of
Yeah.
things. I just say, okay, Chris, looks like this is in your wheelhouse, and I think you're going to do it. And then, if he's not the right person for that seat, then we have to talk about that. And I also don't have any agenda based on, well, I really want this new CRM, so I'm going to just, push it through. It's like I have no agenda. I just know that, is this a good thing for the firm, or is this a squirrel that's going to pull everyone's focus onto something else? So I think that's also the great benefit of having a fractional in, is you get that outside perspective that really is only looking out for the firm.
Actually, I've had a similar experience, and I talk about it more in terms of office politics because, as you say,
Yes.
I don't come in with an agenda of what needs to be done from a political standpoint. I don't really, obviously there's sensitivities, there's things you have to be sensitive to, how people interact and what their roles are and how they've come about it and all that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
really, I'm not there day in, day out having to see that person next day. If I annoy them and they don't want to talk
Right.
to me, there's no skin off my back because I don't have to worry about that the next day. All I do is what's best for the firm and, help the management to get to where they need to be. So how long are we talking to kind of get this first stages going? You said a couple of hours to do the org chart.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
Yeah.
are you at the beginning investing weeks and weeks in just doing this discovery phase and understanding where everything's at in order to kind of progress each part of the EOS?
Yeah, I kind of do it in a hybrid mode because I like to just start off doing the meetings that we're, getting the L10s, what we call them, leadership team meetings. And so then we kind of backfill things as we go along. Again, if they're not using an implementer, because if they're using an implementer, those things are, done in the beginning. They have like a focus day and a vision day, and they're solid days. But, with working with me, if they're self-implementing, we what I call, kind of almost like double dutching. We kind of like in jump rope, we kind of like just try to work things in as we go, so that we can, it's not so that it's like, the implementate or the onboarding part is, the first 2 months, and we're not going to talk about any of the real issues, because let's face it, they would like to do EOS, they want to get this going, but business continues. And as we're doing the accountability chart, there's issues that fall out of that we need to address. And working on a budget and coming up with KPIs and all of those things. So we want to make sure that we're setting it up and also fixing the day-to-day, week to week things that pop up that we need to fix. So I would say, it's a good 6 months to get the traction going, to where it's like, it's kind of, everybody understands. It's also a learning curve a lot of times for the leadership team to understand that even though it's more meetings, it's actually less time, because instead of being pulled by different leadership team meeting members or the managing partner at all times, everybody just saves all of it for that 90 minutes a week. And we also save, we do our one-on-ones, so you're not just pulling people randomly and, interrupting their workday. We actually have set times. And then in 90, we can, there's actually an app for it as well. You can kind of put, as you're going along through your week, like, hey, I want to talk to Sharon about this, or the leadership team needs to talk about that, or a department needs to talk about that, so that we're not just, because sometimes my meetings are on Monday, And of course, on Monday, everything's great, right? Like you
Yeah,
walk in, you're like, you don't
absolutely.
remember any of the things that happened last week. So it's good to keep track of them as you're going along. So that on Monday, we're like, oh, yeah, remember this that happened Thursday? Um, so we want to make sure that all of our meetings are meaningful and that we're getting the most out of that time.
And so these meetings you're talking about, are they only with the management team, or is this every
Mhm.
employee is having one-to-ones or team
Yeah, so it
meetings?
does. It's everything.
Mm.
So it's the leadership team meeting is like a 90-minute meeting, and then each department has their own meeting, which I sometimes sit on. It depends on, the case of who they have in that seat. And so then whoever works under that department, they, are obviously in a department meeting. I have one-on-ones with everybody on the leadership team, but the department leads should also be having one-on-ones with all of their direct reports and so on. Because I think one-on-ones are really important to me, and it's not for the manager, it's for the other person. It's what do they need help with, what's bottlenecked for them, and how can they coach them up to another position in the firm. So we're always trying to train, we're always trying to help them, and that's where the magic comes from, having those weekly one-on-ones, those touch points.
So all this sounds potentially quite time consuming, might
It
take a lot
does.
of management's time, a lot of employees' time. How do you
Yep.
ensure that it doesn't really disrupt day-to-day business?
Well, because it's not going to be so if you have a one-on-one with people and you make them save their questions for that one-on-one, you don't always have to be interrupted when, a
Mm.
random email comes in. And then if you have the department meeting and you bring up that random question, lots of times other people had that same question. And so you can solve it by telling everybody about, what, or having a group solve on it so that it isn't just you telling somebody how to do something. Let's all come up with a solution so that, and I feel like when you do that, you get more buy-in. So I feel like it really does cut down on the amount of time that you're interrupted on a daily basis. But it does take some practice because, when you get that random Slack message or email or what have you, your tendency is like, oh, I want to help them out. It's real quick. I'll just answer it. And it's like, you got to teach people to go, nope, let's put this in 90 and we'll talk about it, when we have our one-on-one or a department meeting.
So every single person's using 90 to do
Yes,
this. Okay.
correct.
So
Yep.
that does sound quite interesting because, as you say, you've got Slack, you've got Zoom, you've got Teams, you've got emails, you've got
Yep.
your phone and WhatsApp, iMessage,
Yep.
whatever it may be. There are so many ways to get distracted and so many ways that employees can
Yes.
communicate with each other and clients communicate with you as well. So I guess 90 sounds like it could be one more system to worry about, but also sounds like it consolidates a bit what needs to be done.
Yes. Yes, and they're working on, integrations too, so that like, if you have an email in Outlook, you can save it as, maybe a task in 90 so that, or issue so that don't have to log into a whole bunch of different things. But it is true. It is a lot of different, there are a lot of different apps out there right now. And I think we're trying to streamline, but then other things come out. So
Yeah, yeah, we're all trying with AI, especially. Just there's
exactly.
so
That's
many
what I was
different
thinking.
products. I mean, you could spend
Yes.
all day trying different different AI products that could be good,
Yeah.
bad, or otherwise, and no one's got time for that, do they? Well, some people must have time;
Yeah.
must be their job. But if it's not your job, then
Right.
yeah,
Well, yeah, and it's also, it could just be like I was saying before, like a squirrel, right? Like if you're
mm,
just always like after the next big thing, is keeping you from getting the real work done. And that's another thing that I do is like, making sure that we're getting the main thing done, so it's not just like we're, pulled in all kinds of different directions. And, especially AI, it's so easy to just be like, oh, we should try, this new phone system and it's an AI generated and they'll answer. It's like, okay, maybe we should look at that next quarter. But this quarter, we've already got things that are set up. Let's try not to, get pulled into too many directions because then nothing gets done, right? If you have like 10 different things to do, you can only half do some of them. you're not going to be able to do one or two or three really well.
It's definitely something, yeah, I've seen as well, strategy versus action, I guess you'd call it, where,
Yep.
when I start to work with law firms, I strongly encourage as much as I possibly can to say, let's take a pause. We're not going to jump straight into doing your website. We're going to jump straight into doing your social media. We're going to
Yes.
do a strategy first. We're going to, to do a SWOT analysis on you and your business. We're going to talk to your partners in the firm. We're going to
Yes.
all get on the same page and get a business development and marketing plan signed off with ideal client profile or ideal client profiles and ideal partner profiles or partner organizations you want to work with. Because the time invested at the beginning in this pays off in spades when you then go to implementation and we do the go-to-market strategy, and the website takes half the time. It costs half as much money, and the social media is very, very targeted at the actual clients that you want to get and the actual people you want to do business with as partners, rather than being spraying and praying and hoping for the best. So that time and money, time and money at the beginning is made up for like 10, 20-fold when you actually start implementing much more efficiently in a much more targeted way.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the key, is that, we're not just, and also that's what we do for our clients, right? Because when they come to you and they're like, hey, Chris, oh, we need a new website, and, I'm going to get these posts out and I'm going to do this blog. And you're like, whoa, 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 we have to be the one that says we need to do the strategy first, and then we can roll out these other things. But that's what they're paying us for. Instead of them managing the process, it's us and telling them what is best. And that sometimes is hard, for managing partners who have done it all of theirs on their own. So they're
Yes.
just used to that. So us coming in and saying, no, we've got this. I'll tell you, this is the best way to do it.
What size of firms are you typically working with? I mean, does the EOS suit all sizes of firms, or is there a kind of a minimum turnover or a minimum headcount that you need to make this work?
EOS says, I think it's like, from, 10 to 250 people. I would say I work with, usually 25 to 30 is kind of my sweet spot of employees in a firm. But I think if you get much larger than that, a lot of times it's, and I'm sure you've seen this, like sometimes they just need a full-time resource, because the scope is going to be too much for a fractional. But then I've also worked with smaller firms, and I just, like I said, sometimes I'm in the department meetings, and sometimes we don't have department meetings because it's the same kind of people that would be on those, so we don't want to overburden with meetings that we don't need to have. So yeah.
And so, just thinking about the overlap, for me, I'm effectively a CMO, a fractional CMO with a niche where I focus on professional services. People like you are a perfect companion to work alongside of, because you are looking at the operational side as a whole. I'm helping with the operation and definitely taking a view of the operations, but it is more with the lens of growing the client base and growing the partners that we work with, and making sure that structure is in place. I think off the top of my head, fractional CFOs are the other main sort of part to the jigsaw, maybe even CTOs as well, because the four all together, I think, just make an unbeatable team.
Absolutely. I think CFOs a lot as well, because they're in the books. And so they can tell when, I was just talking about this with someone else, is that, like, you can only do your job. They can only do their job to a certain extent, right? So if they, are always like, well, we've got to be at this profit margin or this, cost of goods sold number, but they realize that, the revenue's not there, and they don't know, the marketing's not there. So then they need to bring in somebody like you, because it's like, listen, we've done all we can, but they just don't have the revenue to sustain this. And so I think a lot of times all these different people know different things, fractional sales or CROs or what have you. There, if there's no marketing, they could be the best salespeople in the world, but there's no leads coming in. And so I think all of our things are kind of tied together, so that if one part is not working well, say for example operations, they can't get the work done. Sales is working, marketing's great, we're getting the leads, we're turning them over, but if the work doesn't get done, then like you're not going to get clients, and they're not going to stay with you, and they're not going to refer you new business. So yeah, it all has to be on the same level, and I think that's why we all complement each other so well.
And then it becomes particularly interesting when we start talking about law firms and other professional services, accountancy firms. I'll get your view in a minute of, because you've worked across both as a CPA and in law firms. But you talked about the sales teams. Really, there is no sales team in a law firm. There is, respect a corporate law firm, it's the partners or it's the senior lawyers who are the salespeople, and then the marketing people, and they're the fee earners, and they're the professionals, and they're effectively the HR managers. They do everything, and you can't expect someone, especially who's trained to be a lawyer or an attorney and advise on the law, to then turn around and be able to do every single one of these roles even if they do it to the best of their ability, they can't do it as well as a professional. So I think that really is where the fractional model is very empowering, because they need the help. We can give them that help as a team, especially, and help them just to absolutely grow.
Yeah, you're very right. A lot of times, lawyers are really good lawyers, and then they're okay, well then we promote them up to a partner, and a partner level they need to, like you were saying, sell, they need to manage people, they need to manage their time, they're expected to bring in work, origination, and they're not good at any of that. They just, and that's not anyone's fault. It's just sometimes, that person should just be an individual contributor and not be, rose up to the partner level that has all of those other responsibilities. And that's, again, where, like you said, it's great to have fractionals, because they can come in and help them, with the business development, help them with the marketing, so that they don't have to do it all alone. Or same thing with like operations, like holding people accountable for their time and getting things done, and teaching them kind of how to do that. It can also be something that I work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing I've observed about professional services, particularly law firms, is they run quite lean. So you will have, you always just have this divide between the fee earners, and literally the fee earners are the ones that bring in the fees. And unfortunately, there is, I think, a general perception that anyone who's not a fee earner is a cost center. And so it tends to be that those teams, the business development, the marketing, the HR, the accounting teams, the operations teams, are very, very lean compared to what you see in most other types of companies, I guess, other types of organizations. And I think that's another thing where that's where fractional expertise can benefit everybody, because you tend to have, as I said, quite lean teams. Take the BD marketing function. You might have 3 people servicing a firm of 150 people, 100 lawyers, 100 fee earners. That's a lot of work for a team of 3 to do. And again, they are trying to do everything. And you are firefighting the whole time. I mean, I've done it myself in my career. You're just firefighting from one day to the next. One day you're organising an event at the same time as responding to a complex tender, as trying to help a partner to, organise their trip away, and, work with their secretaries to do the logistics of that. And you can't do anything strategic. You can't help the firm to grow and move forward. When you come in as a fractional, as someone has that disconnect but can learn, you can take that helicopter view, I guess, and say, okay, I see what we've got to do. This is what we've got to do. This is the way we've got to move. This is what we've got to prioritize, and take charge. As long as the management give you that empowerment, that power, then you can make a huge difference, whether you're a fractional CMO or a COO or CFO or whatever it may be.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah. And firefighting is kind of always always putting out fires, it's like we're not going to get anywhere. We can't, you know, we can't be efficient. We are just kind of chasing our tail, and it's not. Yeah, and they are very lean. They do and that's another thing that we can come in and tell them that, like, sometimes you need to, make sure that those apartments have the enough resources to make them successful, because you're kind of, making them work with one arm tied behind their back in a sense. And you're going to lose people because people don't want to work like what you just said. I'm sure that was not comfortable for you.
No.
And, now, and so you lose good people over that. So how can we make sure that everyone's working to their best abilities and capabilities, and also, this is the right size for the firm?
Yeah, I think the way that lawyers often think is that, if you're a really good lawyer, a really good attorney, you're really good at thinking in black and white. You're really good at thinking quite literally, looking in black and white what the ROI is. And the same with, I guess, with financial professionals as well. It's very much what's on the spreadsheet, what's on the paper.
Yes.
When it comes to more operational and marketing and business development, it's not all that tangible. And so
Right.
you do need those people who can work in an intangible way to complement the tangible people, like the lawyers and the accountants. And yet, you're right, you don't want to lose those good people, because they are actually the ones that, on paper, it looks like their salaries are a cost, but actually they are adding a huge value to the firm because of the work they're doing in place of what the fee owners would be doing, the savings that are being made. And I guess this must be where, from an operational standpoint, you must see these results. You must see how things change.
Yeah, especially, like you were just saying, is that there's another book that I really, really like. It's Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. And it's basically what you just said. If you can get other people in the firm to do some of the things that the managing partner does, he's, probably getting $500, $600, $700 an hour, something like that. And, you can hire in a virtual assistant, or you can hire in a CRM expert to kind of help him with those tasks. And those also shouldn't be seen as, like, it's called like delegate and elevate. It shouldn't be seen as like you're dumping them on other people. Lots of times other people really like to do those things. And so you're holding them back by taking on things that, if you spent your time billable or going to get clients or being a rainmaker, that would be much more beneficial than filling out your CRM or, sending out emails.
Absolutely. You mentioned CRM, and that brings us to another interesting point is systems. And I guess system dysfunction, I'd probably call it, because that's one thing I've experienced in law firms, and you definitely must see it as it's just that you come in and they've either haven't got any systems at all, or we've got one or two out of the four core ones that should be there, being a CRM and ERP, some sort of billing system and HR. And if any of those are missing, then there is a big gap, obviously. But if there are four of those and they don't talk to each other, then it's an absolute mess.
Yeah, and then also the fact that you can't grow and scale a firm if everybody does something differently. That's a big part of this as well. If you have a group of partners and three of them do their billing like this, and then the fourth one, though, he's got to have it on paper, and you have to use a red pen. It's like the specialness of all of these things really slows that down too. So you've got to have everybody on board that says, hey, we're going to come up with a process that we're all going to live with, and then we're going to implement it, and we're going to use the process and be held accountable to that.
How do you? Because lawyers, especially, are notoriously inflexible in what they do. They do what they do. They do what they're good at. They've written things in a piece of paper and filled out a form for many years. Trying to get them to change that habit into something electronic is quite hard. As part of your role as a fractional COO and an implementer, right?
Integrator.
Integrator. So there's implementer and integrator.
I know. It's very...
Now you might actually... Well, let's take a step back. Let's explain the difference.
Okay. Yeah. So the implementer is, they have, they implement the EOS process. So they're the ones that come in, they do the vision day, the goal setting, all those things to set it up, and they run the quarterlies and the annual. I'm the one that comes in day to day, COO, like integrator. And so I'm the one that's making sure that between the quarterlies, things are getting done and that people are, being held accountable and, reaching the KPIs and scorecard thing, all those kinds of things. That's my responsibility. So that's, by and large, the difference between an implementer and an integrator.
Got you. So back to the systems question. What do you do? What's best practice? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, you really need to make sure that everybody's on board with what we're trying to accomplish. And if you tell people the way that you're doing it costs, the firm money because the office manager then needs to do yours separately and, all of these different things. And then also coming up with a system that takes them in account, right? Not just I was asked once if I just had templates for how everything's done. And I said I could do that, but then nobody would do it because, they need the buy-in. They need to come up with how they, want to do things, as an organization. And so if you can sit down with all the partners and come up with hey, 3 of you are doing it this way. How can we incorporate some of what he's doing into ours and make it a collaborative effort? But by and large, I mean, everybody's at that level is wowed by the money, right? So if you can show them how much more profitable we would be if we just, stuck to things, they usually will agree. And also, if we're trying to grow and scale and we're trying to, build something, this is, another saying, I'm saying, hey, and sometimes it just doesn't work out, somebody's just not right for the firm.
Yeah.
They're not going to change. And as much as it's called the right people, right seat, and as much as you can want them to be, maybe they're really good attorney, but if the culture fit isn't there, if they're not following your core values, it's just, one bad apple in the bunch kind of thing. And so ultimately you'd have to decide if that's, what we need to kind of move them. And it's also could be beneficial for them as well, because sometimes those kind of people that aren't happy in the firm, they're staying because they should stay. But if you're hey, there's probably a better fit for you out there, it's a win-win for everybody. So it's a lot of conversation, it's a lot of communicating and, kind of explaining why we're doing things and not just, sending them out that they have to follow these things. So.
And what you were just saying, you actually made an interesting point about 3 different partners doing things 3 different ways and are not being very efficient, and trying to get them all in a room to talk about that. As an internal resource, as a head of BD marketing or as a COO, whatever it may be, trying to get those 3 partners in a room is really, really difficult. As a fractional, as an external resource, it's so much easier. I found that people respond to that so much better and are so much more receptive to the ideas and putting the processes in place. When you hear it from an external professional who's quite impartial, is not involved in the day-to-day stuff and politics, and really doesn't have that hidden agenda, it's much easier for them to swallow change, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like anything. You have a daughter, and it's if you tell her something, then, well, maybe she'll do it or maybe she'll listen. But if her grandfather says something or a teacher says something, and then it's they listen, because it's they almost get nose blind to your advice at some point, and you're just oh, we're not really listening. But I think, to your point, also they feel we're paying for Chris. Chris is our expert. He must know. And so then they kind of fall more in line than I think, yeah, if you were just the internal resource, they'd be like, you know, I'm sure he'll figure it out and he'll let us know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then we won't listen to him anyway. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, that makes sense. Actually, the analogy you used, it reminded me my daughter was having tutoring by a former teacher of the school, and then the teacher saw her as a tutor versus as she's in school, and she was like, "My God, the behavior, the attitude, the personality is so much different in the home environment to what it is in the school environment when you're with your
Yes.
peers and you're with the teacher." And
Yes.
you're 100% right about that. Just translates so well over
Yes.
to what we're talking about of internal and external advisors.
Yes, exactly.
So outside of elementary and primary school kids, it still works even when we're 50 plus professional partners in, in a law firm or an accountancy
It's
firm.
yep, exactly. Still doing the same thing.
How have you found then? You know, as I said earlier, you're a CPA. You've experienced challenges and opportunities and working in accounting firms and law firms. Are they pretty similar in culture and in approach, or is it markedly different?
No, I mean, it's generally the same because they have, the biggest item on their P&L is people. And that's all the professional services that, I'm working with. So it's generally about billable time, about project. It's about, profitability on projects. It's the same kinds of things. I would say, accounting firms, obviously they're very logic driven because they're numbers and, what have you. And I think attorneys, law firms have more of the argumentative of the, they make their points in a different way, right? So, but very similar structures, very similar, values, very, for at least
Challenges
the
as well,
ones
I
that I
guess.
work with. Yep. Yes, exactly. Usually people, because that's their biggest line item expense. And so, how do we hire, how do we, figure out who we need, that kind of thing.
I also feel with the rise of, I guess, fractional advisors, um, I, it's almost like the range of professional services, professionals of people, is expanding and expanding and expanding. Because traditionally, you might have said, I work in professional service, I work with lawyers and accountants.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're talking doctors, we're talking
Mm-hmm.
dentists, orthodontists,
Yeah,
coaches. You know, there's
absolutely.
so many people now, especially I think since COVID, probably where people have seen the benefits of working from home. People have seen the
Mm-hmm.
opportunities to do business for themselves and provide their profession as a fractional member of society or as a fractional member of companies. Um,
Yeah.
the range of professional and professions is really expanding.
Absolutely. There are way more, I mean, fractionals than when I started than, now than when I started. I mean, it's a very big market, which is, excellent because we get all these different types of fractionals that, we didn't even know existed.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful, and I love being a fractional. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's got
me
its
too.
challenges, but it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, just thinking about lessons that managers, that senior management need to take away. In your view, what's one mindset shift, I should say, that leaders need to take and make if they're going to truly scale?
I think they really have to let go of the preconceived notions that they have and what worked when they started their firm
Mm,
and what can, and it isn't going to be what gets them past, the ceiling that they've hit. They really have to start thinking outside the box and really leaning on other people. A lot of times, they don't even have a leadership team or they don't have somebody like us to talk through things and they're trying to do it all on their own and it just isn't working. And so, if you don't change something, you can't expect things to be different. They just aren't. So I think that's really a mind shift change, and that I can do everything, and I can be everything, and um, really just kind of like realizing that what you don't know, and finding somebody that does.
I've actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking about my own business. It's something that I've had to come to a realization as well, because since being
Hmm.
in business and being a fractional, I've met so many good people who are so good at what they do. But often when you talk to people, you're thinking in terms of how can this person work alongside me with my clients or my potential clients. But actually, I came to the realization that a lot of people I've talked to are fantastic to advise me in my own business, and I should be
Right.
employing them as
Yes.
resources to help me to grow. Because as soon as you have that opportunity to grow and go beyond what your profession is, what your field of knowledge is, you need that help, and otherwise you can't. You do right. You hit the ceiling. You need to grow your team, and you need to have people to complement you. But we now have the opportunity to have real experts that you don't have to hire full time. So the fractional has the fractional resources, is what I guess what I'm saying. We can all help each other
Absolutely.
out.
Yep. And coaches and people that can help us out as well. I mean, I definitely used other people to help me out because I don't know everything. And it's also, like I was saying, the who, not how. I mean, we shouldn't do everything.
No,
Some of these things, we should outsource out so that we can do our main thing and we can help the people that we want to help. And that those people that want to do those other tasks, they can do those instead.
absolutely. And that kind of cost benefit thing that we spoke about earlier, where you think, oh, I don't want to spend the money on that. I don't want to pay that external resource,
Right.
which is what our clients sometimes think. But we have to get our own heads around that sometimes, to go, actually, if I tried to build that website myself, or if I tried to do all this prospecting
Mhm.
myself, or do this, for my own client, I'm much better off. I'm going to, it cost me a lot less money if I think of how much I need to charge versus getting someone who really, really knows what they're doing to do it. It's going to be so much more efficient, and actually the upfront cost
Yes.
is going to be made back in spades.
Exactly, because you can do what you do well. And obviously, if you want to, doing your own website, for example, for me, like it would take me way longer than a professional that knows what they're doing. And then I can work and make money, my billable hour, instead of, spending time on a website.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's the model I've tried to take with my business as well. Is that when I service my clients, I do what I'm good at, which is the business development and marketing strategy, and the overseeing the implementation of that and managing the quality and making sure it's done to the highest spec. And that means that I will get a website developer to do the website, because I could probably do it, but it would take me a month. It would take them a day,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And so the result's not good for anybody. So yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree that we, as resources, we all need to work together and take our own advice.
Yes, absolutely.
So on that note, what are you seeing in the US, I guess, in particular? What are you seeing as the next trends in the fractional space?
I think, like we were saying, I think the next trend is working together and, not being siloed, and realizing that, we can have efficiencies if we all kind of, work together on different projects. Because, like I was saying before, I mean, if your marketing isn't up to speed, your sales aren't going to be there. And if, your operations don't work well, then you aren't going to get any repeat clients. If you don't have the finance team in place, then you have no idea how well you're doing or not doing. Just looking at your bank account and seeing what's in the bank is not a reflection of how well your firm is doing. You need hard numbers and budgets and things like that. So again, accounting, fractional CFOs, that kind of thing. So, and spending time with your people, like, if you've got good people, making sure that they want to stay with you, so some sort of fractional HR. So working in tandem with all of those, I think that's the next big wave of things to happen, because it'd be a lot of, you can grow faster by incorporating all of those people together.
Yeah, you're right. And I was just thinking that some advice that a fractional CFO gave me recently, and that was that companies too often are looking at their books and they're only really looking at revenue, and they're looking at how much revenue they're making,
Yes.
and they're not looking at the costs. But at the
Correct.
same time, you can't just look at the costs either. You can't just cost cut and not have any resource.
Yes.
So you really do have to make sure you've got both in place, that you're making as much revenue as you can as a business, while having realistic costs. And that's the only way to really succeed. And ironically, you probably need a really experienced CFO to help you to do that, who then employs people like you and I, hopefully.
Exactly. Or vice versa.
Absolutely.
We come in and then we realize that they're, the books, they really need to look at that, because that's a lot what I see is that, you get somebody and they're a good attorney, and then they start off with maybe hiring a paralegal or office assistant, and then they outsource some of their finance and stuff like that. And then they think, oh, well, I've made $1 million in revenue, and I'll bring on this partner and we'll make $2 million in revenue. And that's not what happens. It's we bring in a partner, and the partner needs 4 different paralegals, and, it increases the amount of marketing that we need to do. And so instead, the revenue might be 2 million, but you make even less than you did when you were, just the one partner. So it's definitely, you got to look at it, everything in a big picture.
Absolutely, 100%. Make sure your teams that you've got, your employees, are working in the most efficient way possible. So, well, Sharon, it's been absolutely wonderful, and I think you've really lived up to your Means Business name. So,
oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I really appreciate you joining us today. It's been, like I said, very insightful and wonderful. So, I'm looking forward to working together and practicing what we preach.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. For our audience, thank you so much for joining us today as well. That's it for this episode of Muhami Matters. Massive thanks again to Sharon Means for joining me and sharing such clear, practical insights in what it takes to scale your professional services business. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, share it with your network, or share details to contact Sharon in the meeting in the episode notes as well. And as always, for more insights and support, you can visit muhami.ae or connect with me at CJA Consulting. And for now, I'm Chris Adams. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered. Thank you for joining us on Muhami Matters. If you found today's episode valuable, subscribe and connect with me to stay updated. Join me again soon as we continue to bring you credible insights, practical strategies, and trusted advice to empower your professional journey. I'm Chris Adams. Until next time, stay informed and stay empowered.